everybody. I feel like we got to put on our dance routine. Here it goes. That's it. That's all I got. Fabulous to have everybody here. I want to see a show of hands. What type of folks are here? I'm Jeremiah, the moderator. How many of you work at corporations, large companies? Okay. Oh, about over half of the room. How many work at maybe agencies or software companies? Oh, I see about 8 hands, maybe about 10, 15%. And how many folks work at startups or entrepreneurs? About the same amount of hands. So a lot of folks from corporate and brand. Thank you all for coming. We are here today to learn the secrets of digital marketing. And I have a wonderful panel with me today. I'll quickly introduce them, but let them do a quick introduction about who they are and what their focus is on. Zoe here is one of the experts in digital marketing. And can you give a quick intro? I guess we can share the mics around, and she's from Juniper Networks.
Hi, I'm Zoe Sands, and I'm from Juniper Networks. I head up digital marketing and social media for EMEA, primarily focusing on B2B, so a little bit different to my fellow panelists here. So I'm here to share some experiences that I've had in the motor industry, not-for-profit, and also currently in high tech.
Well, thank you, Zoe. Paul is from Telefonica, and he can tell us a little bit about what he does, both B2C and B2B.
Yeah, hi. So I'm the digital and social media lead for Telefonica Europe, formerly the head of social media for O2 in the UK, that you probably all have heard about the Twitter activity. My main role is to try and establish and direct the strategic direction of our social media activities across Europe, as well as lead on major initiatives like Campus Party and the Global Millennial Survey. So that's it, the short version. And
Sonia, please share with us what you're doing at Mondelez.
Hey, my name's Sonia Carter, and I look after digital and social media marketing at Mondelez, which was formerly Kraft Foods. You may know it better as Kraft Foods. And some of our brands are Oreo, Cadbury, Kenco Coffee, Trident Gum, lots of big household brands. And my role is just within the European region. It's about 33 countries, is to help set the strategic direction for how we use social and digital channels to drive our marketing.
And during the course of today, I do want to take questions from the audience. If there isn't a roving mic, you can yell it out, and I'll repeat it so everybody hears it on the stream. But to kick things off, I do want to talk with our illustrious panel about the future. And this really comes about to trying to predict which digital channels our customers, whether they be B2B or B2C or a mixture like Paul does, and then try to meet them there. So how do we predict and where are we going to go? LeWeb's conference is very forward-looking. So how would you do that? Maybe Zoe, you want to kick it off?
So I guess predicting is quite difficult. So I think for us at Juniper, we do a lot of planning, but we do some future gazing. A lot of the things that we look for are things like communities and finding out where those particular people are and what actual social technologies that people are using. So that's something that we, onwardly are always looking for. I guess we can't always stick to the plan, because like anything with digital, I've been working in digital for 16 years and I've never stuck to a plan in the whole of my career, because there's lots of different technologies that are always springing up, and I think you have to be planned but also have that proactive and reactive approach and look for feedback from your customers, maybe doing that through some research, or actively going out there and looking yourself at what other brands are doing, both that in a B2C environment as well as a B2B environment as well.
Thank you. Paul, I got to ask, what's that blue thing you're wearing on your wrist before you talk about the future? Because that looks like it's from the future.
This is the future. So this is the Jawbone Up. So this is the fancy pedometer that I guess is kind of in some respect part of the future, the kind of the quantified self, and trying to understand and measure exactly what it is that that I get up to in the day. I think it's that's certainly.
Are you on par for today?
Not yet, although to be fair, missing the tube stop meant I had to walk further. So in some respect, that's kind of some benefit. So the sleep ratio is significantly further down than it should be. But I think from the in respect to the question, I think there's a couple of things about sort of keeping an eye on the future. I think as a business, we're very, very fortunate to have some very, very smart guys whose jobs it is to actually try and predict future trends, whether it be based on the economy, consumer behaviours. You know, us as a telecoms business is fundamentally having to change. We are becoming a digital experiences business rather than a mobile operator, and with that, we have to keep an eye on any kinds of trends. From a sort of more practical internal level, I think when you look at employees, it's the kind of people that you bring into the business. You know, digital and social is more of a lifestyle choice, I think, rather than a job that you can turn off at the end of the night. And I think by that natural sort of inquisitiveness, you invariably have an underlying idea of what certainly platforms or ideas are springing to the surface.
Yeah, Sonia, speaking of the future, I think your product set might have a faster sales cycle than our friends here from Juniper or Telefonica. How do you keep track of what's coming in the future, what your customers are going to do?
It's an interesting question because I have to have look in both directions. So we're very much looking at the digital channels that are delivering scale, and I'm delighted that some of the channels that were a little mysterious and considered niche, only a couple of years ago, are really incredibly important channels for us now to reach tens of millions of people. So there's a big message for us is how are we using digital to reach not just thousands of people or hundreds of thousands, but tens of millions of people. So that's a really exciting area. But of course, you have to keep the other eye on some of the people that are at this event. So the startups and the utilities and the new marketing channels that we hope that we can partner with them sometimes to give them scale. So we have a couple of really interesting programs with startups that we've run over the last year or so, where we kind of like to think of ourselves as the world's biggest startup. So we have huge scale, and how can we partner with you? We're not a technology company. How can we partner with a startup and actually make them big? So you've got to be looking in both directions, and unfortunately, no one can really predict the consumer behavior. I mean, I have got things terribly wrong, and I won't admit to some of them that I got completely wrong. Facebook. I'm delighted when something moves to scale, but it's incredibly exciting working with stuff that's just coming up, and when you really see a great use case and you think, I know millions of people are going to use this eventually.
Let's talk about one new technology that we saw featured on stage yesterday. I make no qualms about it. I refuse to wear Google Glass on stage. Personally, I feel it's disrespectful to the audience. You should give the audience your full attention. Robert Scoble and Loïc and Ben disagreed, and yesterday, did you all see the Glass Holes panel? That was their title, not mine. And so they talked about this new frame of augmented reality, or Google Glass, when digital is everywhere. That's really what it means. And I'd love to hear from the panelists. Either, do you think this is a reality? If so, when? Or what would it make you say, aha, I want to throw down 100,000 quid and try to do a pilot program? What is your take on Google Glass or augmented reality? Maybe we could flip the order, and if you're okay to start with us, Sonia?
Well, I think for me, it's not about Glass, the technology itself. It'll be the apps that are going to be used on it. So there's lots of technology out there that, the technology in itself is interesting, but, it's actually when people start using it, using the utility on there, that it becomes interesting for us as a marketing channel. So I think it's a little bit of suck it and see of how some of the developers, now they've made that available to people, what they start coming up with. And as soon as we start seeing interesting things that are going to make the consumers want to have glass for themselves, and this is the same with your Apple products there. People wouldn't have been flocking to smartphones and tablets in the droves that they do if it wasn't for the utility that you get out there. The technology in itself is fascinating, but that's where we are at the moment, really, really keeping an eye out for someone who develops an amazing use for glass.
I think for me, and I think in some respects it would be unfair of me to be critical of Glass not having used it, and that wasn't an appeal to anybody at Google, by the way. But I think the thing is that the problem that it solves for me is something which, when you hear Mark Zuckerberg talking about frictionless sharing, I think invariably when the one thing that Google Glasses offers is that opportunity to sort of break that. Sharing is actually a frictionless experience. So, you know, there was lots of pictures of the Pope when he was inaugurated with the. All you saw were iPhone screens. You see gigs, concerts. You know, we have at the O2 lots of phones out, and that's you know, the sharing of that experience is quite a disruptive thing to actually do, which seems to sort of be at odds with what people are trying to do with the experience. So I think in that respect, I think Google Glasses offers a fantastic solution. You know, take picture. You know, you've got that moment shared without having to sort of stop the, oh, could you just say that again kind of moment. But I think the other thing, thinking sort of further down the line, and to Sonia's point about sort of the killer apps, I think that there has to be something beneficial around sort of something like transport or medicine, for example, where you could actually use the ability of the lens to recognize features or locations and, you know, almost sort of diagnose and share diagnoses via the lens that you perhaps would have otherwise just had to do via a webcam, which in itself wouldn't be necessarily reliable. But and transport, you know, where is the bus? You know, how many people are on it? It gives you that sort of added layer of functionality without having to sort of dig out or try and find a Wi-Fi signal.
I think from a B2B perspective, and more so from an IT perspective, the opportunities are vast. Things like, for instance, with training, and if you've got people in remote locations at data centres that are miles away and they've got issues with the actual network, they then can connect with somebody real time, maybe support or a trainer that can actually help them deal with specific issues when they're on site. There's opportunities with conferences, if we take, say, Mobile World Congress, for instance, and the vast amount of vendors that are actually at the conference, and you have that experience of people walking around the conference and they're receiving that data, and then the data's being drawn back to vendors and other opportunities there. So I do feel that there are lots of opportunities for B2B. We just are really only limited by our own imagination there.
Thank you, guys. Any questions from the audience? If not, I have a string more. All right, I'll come back to everybody. All right. One of the themes that I definitely was hearing through all of your pieces is talking about how to scale. Sonia, you talked about there are some new media channels that might reach potentially niches, but how do you get them to scale? Paul, you brought this up, and certainly Zoe, you know, nobody has unlimited resources in any marketing budget. So I'd love to hear from you guys. What are your strategies to try to scale, especially the new media technologies? Any takers?
Yeah, so we, I mean, part of my job is across Europe to try and sort of understand how we can share best practice, and invariably with social, a lot of that is platform and process related. Thinking back to Jeremiah's research years ago about the hub and spoke model around kind of organizational structure, that allows us to be much more scalable without necessarily needing a body in each of the departments within the business. But a lot of things around process, it's incredible when you actually deliver or implement something which is a piece of software that previously 3 pieces of software were providing, makes a fundamental difference to the speed of operation and the speed with which we can both respond and broadcast to customers. I think the one thing behind customer satisfaction, certainly from a social media point of view, that we're really cautious of is the speed of response. And so, you know, it's such an important metric for us, the ability to be able to respond within 60 minutes at the worst to the vast majority of inquiries we get through social, because that in itself limits I suppose the risk of a problem being much bigger than it might have been. So we're very, very careful to understand where our traffic is, where the majority of our customers reside, the nature of the inquiries on each of those channels, and we try and sort of essentially staff up both from a shifts point of view, so 6 till 10 during the week, and also try and make sure we're resourced adequately at key peak times, such as outages or when we had the Beyonce event, where because everybody in the team was trained, they were able to jump on at that last minute to make sure we could handle the volume. So I think it goes back to my point about skills. Everybody is capable, but processes and software are big factors in helping us achieve that.
That's great.
From Juniper's perspective, we want people skilled up in the organisation. As a smaller vendor in the IT market, we can't compete with the likes of Cisco and HP in their marketing spend and their digital budgets. So we have to leverage that intellectual property and the internal communities that we have with the employees and skill those employees up, give them the confidence, the tools that they know that they can do these things, and have that empowerment there. But also looking out to our customers and our partners to also help us and create some of that content and noise out there in the marketplace, rather than just focusing on the marketing content, the vendor content that we're actually creating, but leveraging those channels that are out there, and also those people that are there at the coalface, that are there with the products and using the products and services, and that actually can then help other people. So more leading towards peer-to-peer rather than B2B. So we're looking at, P2P.
Actually, I want to touch a little bit on that. So that's an interesting thing. You're tapping into your employees and your customers to do your marketing. Is that right?
Yep.
Can you give me just an example of some of the programs that you've done? I just want to hear a little bit more about that.
So we have a guest blogging program that's open to any customer and also any partner, and we look for those real-life stories and extend those stories out into the blogging platform, be that through text, images, video, because it's more, people are going to resonate more with actually people rather than actually a brand itself. And gone are the days of the 1980s when people put brands up on pedestals. Now people want to have those relationships actually with people, and they want to know what the experience is. So it's all about making sure that that brand experience is actually leveraged through other channels rather than the traditional channels.
Sonia, how about you? How do you get your customers to do some of your work for you to scale?
To scale. Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think because of the type of products that we've got, again, it's a little bit of a dichotomy because we have products that people feel very passionately about and they genuinely love these products, have grown up with them, don't think about them being owned by a big company behind that. They think very much of Oreo and Cadbury. People have a really strong emotional bond with them. So people want to talk about them, and we also have fans in the tens of millions. Not necessarily, I don't just mean official Facebook fans, but just we have fans in the tens of millions, probably the hundreds of millions. So they will naturally be talking about our brands, but what we have to do is we are really, really aware of the way that people are using social at the moment. That's never going to give us the scale that we want. So it's a really great indicator of content that where we've really hit a sweet spot. So if we post something, we share something, and we see that there's a high level of engagement, that our virality is high, people want to share that content themselves, they want to be associated with it, we know that we've hit the mark, and then that's when we may push that with paid media to actually get the scale. So even with brands that, Oreo has 30-something million fans on Facebook, we still cannot get the scale that we need just relying on the organic reach of our fans. And I'm sure Facebook would be very pleased and Twitter would be very pleased for me to say that we do have to, the reality is that we do have to put media behind that now, but we are seeing
we'll come back to that topic. I want to come back to that. Okay, good. Anything else on the scale aspect? Great. Any questions? If not, I have... Rick, from Edelman.
So 2 clients on the panel, thank you for doing this. But I guess the question I have is how quickly and how well do you think your organizations are adapting to an environment in which we increasingly have to operate in real time?
That was my next question. Rick from Edelman asks the following. How do our organizations adapt to react to real time? In fact, Sonia and I had fun with David Armano at South by Southwest from Edelman talking about real-time marketing. And there was jokes made on the panel that we're attending that people were marketing in their pocket with their cell phones, and we called it pocket marketing. It's getting a little out of control. But let's talk about real-time marketing. But Sonia, maybe we could hear the story from the Super Bowl. I know that's certainly American-centric, but help us understand that story for those that may not be familiar with it. And I'm trying to make sure that we appeal to our global audience here.
Yeah. So I am going to give you a very local example of that, because how many of you are familiar with the "you can still dunk in the dark" Oreo tweet, Facebook post, which seems to have become the poster child for this real-time marketing? So I have to say that from the European point of view, I mean, I love the fact that that's held up as a brilliant example. So this was when they had a power. I mean, I'm English, so I apologise now if I say it. Put a real faux pas with your sporting activities. There was a power cut in the stadium of the biggest sporting event of the year in the States, and I think within a few seconds, Oreo tweeted a very nicely executed image of an Oreo in the dark, saying "you can still dunk in the dark," and this has been held up as a real gold standard for real-time marketing. Having been someone who led the digital program for Cadbury's sponsorship of the London 2012 Olympics, I was sitting at this event last year, really wondering why on earth I'd committed to something 4 weeks out of it before an Olympics. But that was all about real-time marketing. So every minute of that was real-time marketing. What that really comes down to, I think Paul and I were having a good discussion about this just before, and it really comes down to trusting the community managers. So the situation with Oreo is that they have a trusted agency who's been shepherding the Oreo social experience for quite some time. They have a very, very good relationship with the brand team.
Can we say which agency that is? Is that possible to say?
Yes, you can say 360i.
Yeah.
A little plug for them there. It really came down to trust and confidence. They understood the voice of the brand, absolutely. So Oreo's...
Did you have templates ready to go that you created, like
No.
Photoshop files or something? Or
No, not at all.
Did you have like improv comedians ready to go, or
No, I think the best community managers or social editors usually have a journalistic background, so you naturally need to have someone who can think on their feet and respond in real time. Oreo's creative positioning was around responding to real time events. They'd had tweets happening for quite some time. You may have seen the Gay Pride tweet with the rainbow Oreo. That was obviously planned, but it was in the brand's DNA to be responding to cultural events. So it made absolute sense for them to respond to something as big as this. When we were looking at the Olympics, that was like minute-by-minute marketing because things were happening. Specifically for the UK, we weren't doing very well at the beginning. Then we did fantastically well, and really having to shift the tone of voice and the kind of events that we were talking about. It's really within the DNA of some of our brands to do that. And I think O2 in the UK is a fantastic example of maybe not real-time marketing, but real-time communication. And it does come down to entrusting the person who's running your channels, having very, very clear alignment around what the brand pillars are, what the things that you will talk about and you won't talk about. But that's when it really shines. It's not, I don't think it's rocket science. I think it is just maybe not a sexy answer, but it is just about trusting the person managing the channel.
What about on the B2B side, friends? How fast is real-time marketing on B2B when the sales cycle could be 18 months, perhaps? How does that work? Zoe, Paul?
Oh, sorry, Zoe.
So we don't do, per se, real-time marketing. It's more about real-time communication if there's something that's happening out there in the market. So, for instance, maybe there might be a network outage of one of our customers. Then we would have some kind of risk assessment of how we would respond to that. There's also been cases of where competitors have actually taken us on and done specific campaigns about us, but then we've chosen not to respond to that, and that we've actually used the community, so our brand advocates who've actually come to our defence and have come to the likes of some of the other vendors that have started to attack us. So I think it's more about that communication element, and to also Sonia's point about that trust element. It's having trust in your own employees, your advocates, but also knowing when to jump into that conversation and when to utilise that, or when to actually stand back and actually watch it.
So here's a question for you, Paul, and you're very focused on the social. Do you ever get to sleep anymore in the real-time marketing world?
Do you know I'm actually only 23 and I just look 40? No, it's. I mean, from our point of view, as I say, we use a lot of insights to try and understand when our peak days are, when our peak times are, and resource accordingly. But what I constantly find amazing are organisations who have a room perhaps of the same size of this, full of TV screens, pulling in brand mentions that actually are quite passive and not necessarily something which needs responding to. And there is this perception that you need a fundamentally huge team in order to support that. Now, I guess globally there will be opportunities that you need to do that, but I just don't believe that that's necessary. I think with the right tooling and the right structure in place, you will have a steady flow of activity that you constantly can manage and monitor in a very, very effective way, and it's all born out of the insights. And when we talk about social business, whatever that definition may actually be, that ability to learn from what's happening outside and for it to impact internally and change behaviours is so important. So I'd like to think that we across all our businesses operate really, really slick, efficient processes that allow us to be very clear and open with customers that this is the times that we're operating in, and invariably if something happens, we're always on at some point to allow us to be able to pick something up.
Is it too much to say that you're real-time marketing from the stage here with that iPad?
This is actually Evernote with some notes, but
okay,
I am
not
picking up
real-time
tweets
marketing
as well.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, I think one of the things that we're trying to get a bigger understanding within Mondelez is that, all of the channels are people having conversations, and, you can't as a brand be the one that kind of lumbers in. Everyone's talking about X Factor, and you kind of lumber in and you want to talk about, gardening. So you have to see that you're in a stream of conversation you're competing with friends and family who are naturally going to be, get way more attention than a brand. And how can we you can't be in a conversation unless you're talking about something relevant. You can be the catalyst for that conversation, and people think, oh, yeah, I really want to talk about that. I think that more and more brands are really becoming more brave about kicking off conversations that are particularly about current events. I saw a couple of very funny ones this morning relating to Talisa being done for, and Coke. Somebody wants to Google Talisa and Coke. The moment Coke in the UK is doing all of the named bottles. I'm sorry if there's someone from Coke in the room, but that will bring you on to another topic of your brand being hijacked a little bit.
But I think just to add to that, I think the tone of voice is so true. Having spent lots of years agency side, it's very easy to try and make the definition of a tone of voice in social appear as if it's some convoluted, well thought out process with sentence structures and verbs and adjectives. And that's not to say that creating a tone of voice shouldn't absolutely require all of those features. But the one thing that has worked so successfully for O2 in the UK has been that groundedness. And when we try to sort of look at, is there a tone or is there a structure to
What about in a crisis? Have you been in a social media crisis?
Yeah, so our network went down.
Oh, and what happened? What did you do?
So essentially, we just before my time, in all fairness, but the team were very, very active in acknowledging as many people as they physically possibly could. Which again, talking about the planning that my boss put in place well in advance of that, meant that everybody was able to jump on and essentially reply to everybody. And for a brand such as ours, for that to happen, it's kind of the worst thing you could ever do. So it's that acknowledgement that we're sharing your pain, and I think with a structured, formal tone of voice, saying we're sorry for any inconvenience, doesn't get across the empathy that you're sharing with people who are suffering significantly because of that problem. So we frequently used to sort of, we applied empathy with empathy and humour with humour where it was appropriate.
I don't think you're doing yourself justice in there. I encourage anyone from outside of the UK who didn't see O2's tweets when their network went down. I mean, the anger was unbelievable. And if you, I know you've probably won lots of awards for it, so it's quite easy to find. But they are hilarious. It's quite British humour and a little bit.
Just give us an example, and all of a sudden you become an advocate, just bringing the panel to life.
See if you can do it without swearing.
I can't do any of that. I'm thinking of the ones that are not. I keep thinking of the ones where there was, which is not related to that particular crisis, but one of your complainers speaking in a particular vernacular.
Yeah. So we had a chap who was, I think, sort of gangster in nature, and was complaining about his broadband ting fam wasn't working. And initial sight was, what the hell has he written? But actually, one of the guys in the team clearly understood it and responded, you need to reboot the Wi-Fi ting, man. And the response back from this chap was, oh, you speak street or something like that. Again, I'm paraphrasing. But it's very much a case of, oh, you're talking like me. Wow, all right. And that was another great example.
And there were some that were very rude, involving doing things to people's mums.
Yeah, sorry, I've got a network to repair. Or somebody sent us a picture of a pigeon saying, if you're on O2, you might need to use one of these. We put a tweet out saying, well, how much do you want for the bird? So, it's to go to the point, it's absolutely acknowledging the pain that people are suffering, but it's that authenticity of tone that allowed us to be able to achieve that.
I love those examples. There's a question from the audience. If you could also state your name.
Sure, it's Simon Morris from Adobe. Hope you can hear me okay. Great session. Just a question. Trust has been mentioned a few times. I think trust is a key element of the sharing economy. We've heard that for the last day or so. But taking that in a different direction, there was a research last year that said something like 70 to 80% of CEOs don't trust marketeers. It'd be great to get your perspective on what you're doing to build that trust or to repair that trust if you feel that it's broken in your organization.
I'll repeat that. Thank you, Simon. And Simon on Twitter, I was watching, said I did a good job using the term quid, not dollar. So thank you for paying attention. I tried to be international. So the question from Simon is, we're here at LeWeb, and the focus is on the sharing economy. And a big thing is around trust. And one of the studies that he was referencing, I don't know if it was the Edelman study, but that CEOs, I assume that their buyers, 70 or 80% of CEOs didn't really trust the brands or who they were buying from. So, and I think that's a great question. I just want to tee it up a bit. What role do marketers play if customers don't trust them? I'm going to hand it off to you.
Thank you. I think the role that marketers play nowadays is more about verifying the information. There's an awful lot of user-generated content out there. Some of it is correct, some of it is rubbish out there, but it is actually up to the brand, such as like newspapers verify the news off Twitter nowadays, is that brands now need to verify what content is actually created out there. To your point about CEOs trusting marketers, I think a lot of that is actually due to education. You have to actually get your presence, a share of voice at the table there, and actually develop programs specifically for them, do one-to-one sessions, get them socially enabled so that they can see the experiences themselves and they can, join in the conversation. If you've got all these CEOs that are actually not joining in the conversation, they're, remote to actually what's happening out there with end users and customers, and they're not really seeing what's actually evolving out there in the marketplace. So it is very much about using your influence and actually educating them, maybe in a different way than you would the rest of your organisation, but they still need to understand the opportunities there.
Thank you. Beyond CEOs, what about for customers or consumers that may not trust you as much as they trust each other? What do you do?
I think one of the things that we do is try and create experiences or a platform and experiences that we almost don't need to be carrying any messages. Absolutely, we have a commercial objective, and we try and have a at the end of the day we have to sell contracts and devices and airtime and everything else. But I think one of the things that we focus really hard on is I guess what we kind of call this social media user journey, that in the sense that we will attract interest in the brand. People become fans by the sharing of relevant, timely content and experiences, and to go to sort of real-time marketing efforts. One of the great things O2 in the UK did this week was to put up an ad for the new Refresh contract, which allows you to change phones as often as Chelsea change managers. You know, that kind of thing is very, you know, it's a great shareable experience. And when we talk about taking customers on this sort of social media user journey, we're just the conduit for that to happen. We make them feel proud to be the person that shared that first amongst all their peers, or the person who has the envy of all their peers because they've got tickets to something that their friends haven't. So I guess in some respect we're kind of the carriers of the message, not necessarily the deliverers of it.
Sonia, I want to shift the question just a little bit for you. You were sharing with me, and today's theme of the event is around the sharing economy. Your brand shares, or it's a shareable experience. Can you help us understand how that relates to today's theme?
Yeah, I was discussing that a lot of our actual products are designed to be shared, and there's an interesting theme today, and you know, how that makes us communicate differently. So certainly, I'm talking about, you know, larger format bars of chocolate or bags of confectionery. And that reflects how people are consuming our products now. So it's actually less about people buying an individual product and consuming it on their own. The wonderful thing about human nature now is that people really like sharing these products. So for us, that's about, you know, having two different conversations. It's about talking to the buyer, so the person who actually goes to the supermarket and the store and buys the product, and also talking about the other people who may not buy the product, but they're part of the experience of consuming it, and us being authentically part of that moment. So is it sitting in front of Downton Abbey? Is it having a marathon Arrested Development session in front of Netflix? That, you know, that we're part of that experience. And going back to the kind of the trust part of that, authenticity is key. So, you know, we have a slightly different approach, or we encounter slightly different challenges. So trust for us is just about being very true to the brand. So we have to make sure that we don't suddenly start talking about something that jars with what people's understanding of, you know, some of the brands. Milka is a 111-year-old chocolate brand. Cadbury is 100 years old. That people don't suddenly wonder why on earth we're talking about something inauthentic. Why are we talking about that? And we did, you know, that was very interesting in going back to the Olympics, you know, aligning that message of how do you authentically, as a chocolate brand, talk about the greatest elite sport event on the planet. So, you know, it was all about how do we share that experience with millions of British people and get behind Team GB, and then when it actually was going on, how do we, you know, shout about it? And that's how we played an authentic space in that kind of sharing those experiences.
That's great. One of the hot trends, well, actually, we conducted a survey to folks like yourself at corporations to find out where you're focusing your marketing efforts. And for 2013, one of the most top talked about focus areas was content marketing. And this is really where the marketer starts to act like a media company or a media empire. And I'd love to hear your 3 points of view. Is this true? Where are you heading? Are you investing here? Care to add to this, Zoe?
So as I mentioned earlier, we do have various programs with user-generated content, as well as a active community of about 55,000 people in our own actual community who do generate content, help other users, do FAQs, give them ideas, any information that they actually require. Anyone can actually join that community if you work in actually IT with Juniper equipment. A lot of the user-generated content we use is mainly to actually tell those stories. So we're very much interested in storytelling, and be that through our customer reference program or from a marketing perspective, we're actively going out there and looking for those stories, effectively like if you say like a journalist, we're looking for those interesting stories that people have got to say. And often our customers and our partners don't always necessarily see those stories themselves, so it involves us doing research, questioning them, interviewing them, and then making them realise that they've got these stories. We don't actually rewrite the stories for them, so it's done in everyone else's own tonality, their own voice, and it's because we want to humanise the brand. We want to bring that human element to the stories and not a marketing spin, and to make it real.
I actually admired one of your programs. This is an old one, about 5 years ago, called Masters of IT. It was a podcast series. I don't know if you even know this program. It's an old one, before your time. But it was an excellent example of how Juniper featured their own customers, even in heterogeneous product deployments with competitors, and featured your customers as heroes for them to tell their stories on a podcast. And that was like 5 or 6 years ago. So you guys have definitely lived up to that. Paul, content marketing, is it for real?
I think it absolutely has to be, and but I think, as I say, for me, this goes back to providing the means for an experience for customers to share themselves what it is they're experiencing. But I think what we, as businesses within the group, need to try and understand is what the potential for sharing of that content is, and therefore that actually informs the type of experience that you'll put on. So, we've got a gig at one of the O2, for example. It's not just a case of, well, we'll run a promotion around it. So, okay, what experiences will people be sharing themselves, and therefore how can we make that part of the experience in the first place? And I think when you talk about convergence or integration of social within the business, I think I'm often sort of quite privileged to sort of work among people who really absolutely get that, and in some respects are automatically asking questions about how they can do more with the assets that they've got, and that video is a significant one of those areas. You would argue that we've all got HD capability recorders in our pockets, and the question that we often ask ourselves within the comms team even is how can we do more with that? That's not necessarily talking about grand production values, but actually how can we actually do much more spontaneous activity?
That's great. Sonia.
Yeah, I think that another title for this panel could be that all marketing is content marketing for us. I see. I'm really excited to be involved in marketing at a time where creative agencies, who I think have been looking to adapt. How do they adapt themselves to the new way that people are consuming media, and content is absolutely the door that suddenly I think everyone breathes a sigh of relief. That this is how we stay relevant. So it's no longer about a TV ad. It's how about this? It's a piece of video content that's going to be shown X number of times on this TV channel, but it's also going to be consumed as pre-roll and live elsewhere. And how would you? If I was a creative director, I'd be like super excited about how does that mean I write my scripts differently? How do I make sure that I'm doing something awesome in the first 5 seconds rather than leaving the hit to the end, as we tend to do certainly in UK TV advertising. We always seem to need to have a sarcastic comment at the end of all of our TV ads. But it's wonderful because content can be anything from grand production with 400 extras shot in Argentina to 140 characters or a 6-second video. So I'm really excited. It's phenomenally important for us, but it is a journey for marketeers to wrap their head around everything being content and telling a story. And how do we develop a creative concept for content that is going to give us fuel for a conversation several times a day for the next 2 or 3 years. So that's very different from just creating a 30-second bit of content. It's how is this going to live? What's all the conversation that we're going to have around that? So it's a really big thing for us.
So to close things off, and this has been a fantastic panel, panelists, I'd love to hear from you in 140 characters. In a year from now, what's the most important skill marketers should have? And I'd love to hear your quick thoughts on the most important skill marketers should have a year from now. Sonia, let's come back down the line.
Integrated connections planning. I don't know how many characters that is.
You're fine.
Can I just say hashtag I agree? Because I absolutely think that's the case. The integration of insights into the business informs so many different aspects of what we do. So yeah, I'd absolutely agree. Integrated planning.
I would say enriched content through video, images, and words.
Please give a round of applause to this excellent panel who shared the secrets of digital marketers. Thank you, guys.